actually, it all began when my husband left me, and people would call and say, "My God, what happened?" And I would say, "I'm not talking about this."
Can you hang the phone up for me?
How do you do that?
And then change the subject to let them know that I wasn't angry with them. But as an aside, I will tell you, they never called back. Why, hello, everyone, and welcome to Silver and Sensational. I'm Lois Mills, the I, the low, and I've missed you. I've been gone for a few weeks, and so I'm going to bring you up to date on what I've been doing. And just know that I missed seeing all of you. I'm going to dive right in and give you an update on what's happening with my plans to move to Paris. Well, to say I'm overwhelmed is an understatement. However, I have been moving along in getting all of these antiques and furniture starting to move around. So I've been able to sell a couple of pieces, and the rest are going to go to an antique dealer. So I'm feeling way better about this, and that's one step in the direction. I've also been through all of the papers in the house, which is a lot. And then I still have those in the garage, but I am getting help to do that, and then it'll go off to the shredders. And in the meantime, things are status quo in Paris. You know, of course, we had the Olympics, which kind of put the city at a standstill. And it's August, and everybody goes away in August. So the people I'm working with will start looking for an apartment for me in the middle of October. So when that begins, I'll be able to get a better handle on when I will actually be moving, and then I can start to apply for my residential visa. So I will keep you abreast of everything that goes on, and there we have it. So, something came up while speaking with a very good friend, and it really has to do with this move, but it also is something that I think we all have issues or situations, situations like this. So a good friend of mine is talking to me and says, you know, I'm really concerned that you are going to be there and you don't have anybody and there's no one there for you and you're just going, you know, and I'm really concerned. Now, he's the second of two people who almost every time they talk to me, there's always this great apprehension. Now, I'm not going to say it didn't upset me because it did. But what I really wanted to say is, do you really think my cognitive powers are so far gone that I don't realize, and I haven't thought of the issues that could arise from my being there alone? Because I certainly have. And when I say, you know, I'm apprehensive about doing this or I'm afraid of doing this, it isn't, you know, I've done stuff like this before, but it really is, I've never given up my entire life by leaving everything behind. So here's where I am with it. And this is where I can maybe give you some idea of how I handle this. And that is, I look and I realize that this is coming from their own fears. You know, I could look at it as being really judgmental that, you know, I'm not capable of making a decision that is going to affect the rest of my life. And it really could be interpreted as that. But I do know that in one situation, it's actually caring, but it really does speak to that person's fears and that individual's wanting me to do what they do. You know, I know people that are really not people that can move out of their comfort zone. I also know many people who cannot accept that yesterday is yesterday, and what used to be isn't what is. It did affect me because I did feel like, oh my God, listen, nobody makes these kinds of decisions 100% sure that this is going to work out or this is going to be something that is the right thing to do. It's what I believe is the right thing to do for me at this time in my life. I am talking about this, and as I say, it happens to relate to my moving to Paris, but it is also something that goes along with another subject, and that is how to handle nosy questions. This is something that I must say I learned a long time ago, and it's really saved me from a lot of a lot of premature sharing of what I am feeling. So let me take it a step further and get a little bit more specific. When somebody asks a question that you deem inappropriate or you're not ready to answer, I find that most people, and I will say particularly my sisters, feel that if someone asks a question that you must answer them. And I never felt that. Well, I shouldn't say I never, but once I got into my mid-40s, actually, it all began when my husband left me, and people would call and say, "My God, what happened?" And I would say, "I'm not talking about this."
Can you hang the phone up for me?
How do you do that?
And then change the subject to let them know that I wasn't angry with them. But as an aside, I will tell you, they never called back. It's really about finding out what's going on. There are those people that need to know. They have a need to know what is going on. If you're buying a house, did you get that house? It's they need to have the information so they can be the ones in the know. I say, if you don't wish to answer, you don't have to. How do you know when you don't want to answer something? Follow your gut, because your gut's going to tell you, what the F are these people asking me this for? That's one way of knowing. Another way of knowing is you're really taken aback. It's ruffling your feathers. The way to know this is a question that you don't want to answer is 100%, in my opinion, gut level. There's a little something that clicks on that says, why the F do you need to know the answer to that? Believe me, you've had this happen to you. I know you have, and I know you have felt uncomfortable, but you uttered out the answer because you felt an obligation, or you didn't want to appear rude, or maybe you didn't want them to know that you were uncomfortable with this question. Let me give you an example. You have a child, one child, and somebody will say to you, well, don't you want another one so that your child isn't an only child? And then they'll go on with, have you thought about what happens when you and your husband are gone? Who is this child going to have? So that's one kind of question that if I were in that situation, I would feel like I don't need to answer this. And if in the back of your head, you're thinking, why the do you need to have the answer to that? That's already your cue that you don't need to answer this. And there are ways of handling this that, depending on the situation, depending on whether you've determined that this person has a genuine interest and genuinely cares about you, or whether they're just nosy and want to know, Like the curious minds want to know. Well, the curious minds don't need to know what you don't want to tell them. So one way of answering is, what is the reason you're asking me this question? That's one way of handling it. That's turning it back on them. Why are you asking this question? See what they answer. You can also come up with, you know what? I'm not ready to talk about that. And then change the subject so that lull that's going to be taking place is not a thunderous silence. You can just change the subject into, you're talking about something not even related. In this way, you sort of ameliorate any harshness that other person may be taking. Or you can simply say, it's a very sensitive issue for me, and if you really care and want to discuss it, let's do this at another time. It's another way of handling it. Have in the back of your head a couple of these responses so that you're not really caught off guard, and practice them. Now, something I do, which, I'm not saying you should do it, but when someone asks me a question I don't want to answer, I simply don't say anything. I just let the silence hang. And then the other person, usually people cannot stand dead silence, so they'll try to put in something like, but, and they'll start to scramble and whatever. And I've been told that my doing this intimidates people. I'm sorry if it does, but not all that sorry, because I feel if you've got the huevos to ask me a question that is clearly none of your GD business, then I don't need to worry about you suffering in silence. So it's, for me, I'm not saying this is what you should do, but this is my automatic response. Sometimes, on occasion, I have said, why would you ask that? Here's this line which I'm talking about today, which is, I'm really worried about you. If something happens to you, this could be blah, 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 and rata. At first, I would respond with, well, yes, and then go on, to give them the reasons that I have for wanting to do it. And now I simply say, do you really think I haven't thought about that? And I don't think that they're getting the idea that they are really insulting me. But as I said, you got to cut some people slack, because it's coming from their own sense of insecurity, fear, whatever shtick is going on in their lives. I guess I can bring this to conclusion by saying, weigh the situation and the circumstances as well as the person that's addressing you. And if you feel that they are simply being nosy, for me, I take a more direct, maybe a harsher tone than I would with somebody who I believe really cares and is coming from their own insecurities. But truly, what I've learned, that you can't change anyone, that, as much as I have encouraged certain people to break out of their comfort zone, they're simply not going to do it. So when I see that they are not going to leave their comfort zone, I stop talking about whatever it is I used to try to be encouraging about. I don't know if that's of any help to you or not. I bring it up because it's something that happened this past week 3 different times. And when it came to the 3rd time, I just said to the person, if I didn't have fears about leaving my entire life behind, then I think I should have my brain looked at, because I think it's pretty normal and natural to be apprehensive about jumping into a lake that you don't know the current of. So, think about this. If you come up against these kinds of things, I hope whatever I've said today may give you a different outlook, or maybe some ideas as to how to handle. But in the meantime, I want to invite everyone to please go down in the description, and there's a link to our new blog. And, of course, you know the routine. Subscribe if you haven't, and for those of you who are new and are not used to subscribing to YouTube channels, believe me, no one's going to bother you. There's no money involved, just it does help Silver and Sensational. And then, of course, hit the like button, share me with all of your friends and family, and do press the notification bell so that you know when a new episode drops, which is generally 12 midnight Central Time Friday morning. In the meantime, I wish you all well. Look after yourselves. Take care. I'll see you next week. And thanks for tuning in. Bye now.